Hello friends and welcome back to Pages and Pens / Julie Z Author. Today I am here with a reading wrap up for all of 2023. Let's jump into it. I have mild reading stats. Was it my best year of reading? No. In fact, it was actually actively my worst in terms of numbers, but I did a lot. I moved, I wrote books, published books. Things happen, and like mental health wise, this was probably all I could handle, and I'm really happy with the books that I read. I don't rate books anymore, but I do track them on a private StoryGraph account where I just literally say whether or not I've read something. I'll mark it if it's annotated, I'll mark it if it's an arc, I will mark it if I own it, and then I will mark the year that I read it. This year I read 76 books, one of which crept in right at the end. I read a decent number of ebooks, like digital books, but then also like an okay number of physical books. I've unhauled some of them. Some of them I do still have. What I'm going to go over today are like some of my favorites, but then also all of the books that I annotated that I have physically. I do have a list of like my favorite books that I think I probably enjoyed the most this past year. I'm going to go over those, and then if they're in this pile, fantastic. So all of them except for one book I have physically, so I'm not going to go over it, but the one that I really loved was Maisie Eddings' Late Bloomer. It was a sapphic contemporary romance, and it was adorable. I don't know if that's come out yet. The arc was amazing. I absolutely loved it. I have then since bought everything else by them. I have not read any of it. I already owned Lizzie Blake's Best Mistake, but then I bought all the other ones as well because I liked their writing that much. It's so good. And will be buying it, just have not yet. But I do have over here piles of books. I have romance, thriller, fantasy, horror, and fantasy, but specifically Brandon Sanderson. We're going to go over what I read by way of what I annotated, which is probably what I spent the most time on. I definitely took my time with. There are a couple that I read that I am not going to be discussing because we're not discussing those titles right now. I actually probably should double check that there's no other ones in here, but I don't think so. If there are, I apologize. I know of like one for sure I can't talk about. It's not the one with winged beasts, so don't worry. It's not that one. I have not read that. I don't have any intentions of reading that one, but I'm not going to be discussing it. I do have it annotated, but we're not gonna talk about it. I read a lot of really great arcs this year and a lot of like super smutty ebooks. I don't have those to show you. But let's start with Sanderson because I did make some progress with his collection. I read Shadows of Self and Bands of Mourning. This is books 2 and 3 of the second era Mistborn, and I do have the fourth one. I need to read that. Maybe that'll be the next thing that I read. I'm currently reading Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This is like my first read, no, my second read of 2024, and is annotated. My other book was the latest Sean McGuire Wayward series, also annotated. So I'm starting off my year strong. But anyway, neither here nor there. I read both of these because I really want to finish this era, and as you can see, they are lovingly annotated. I read Elantris in this beautiful $100 freaking leather-bound edition. I love this book. It was amazing. I probably would have annotated it more had it not been this edition. Like, I usually tab and annotate and like write in. I did not write in this because that's madness. It's a $100 book. I could never. But the font on this is so much easier to read than the like white UK version that I read it this way, and I annotated as much as I was comfortable. Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, and annotated this one. I loved this book. This was definitely a standout among the 4 Secret Project books. I also read Frugal Wizard, loathed it. Tried to read Sunlit Man, DNF'd it. For now, I'll finish it at some point, but really loved this one. I think my favorite of all of them might have been Tress, which I also read and annotated and was just so happy with. So I was really happy that I kept up with these as they came out this year because I did back it, obviously. And with the exception of Sunlit Man, which I think I got to like page 120 on, I've read all of them. So my Sandersons have been read and tabbed, and I love that for me. I reread Strange Grace this year because I love this by Tessa Gratton. This is a queer poly YA fantasy. I love it. I tabbed it because I had actually read this a while ago, annotated it, but then not tabbed it. So I went through, reread it, and tabbed it this time. I read an arc of Court of the Undying Seasons by A.M. Strickland. I love A.M. Strickland's writing. I have all of their books. I read all of them in arcs and then bought them and then went through and tabbed and annotated this one after the fact with my, like, the annotations that I had in the ebook in my arc. There were a lot of them. And I have them like underlined and tabbed. It's also queer. All of their books are. A.M. Strickland's really good about that. All different like spectrums of sexuality as well. And this is about different vampire schools that you have to go and like train for. And they take people from the village like to go and train and become vampires. I don't really know how to just describe it. It was one of my first reads of the year, but I really loved it. I love all their books. Lost in a Moment and Found by Sean McGuire. I always love the Wayward Children series. I did really, really like this one too. Again, starts off with some really heavy topics right on the forefront, but like loved it. Love all of them. Tapped it. This one I barely annotated. This is The Deal with the Elf King by Elise Kova. This is I think self-pub. And there's like a few annotations in here. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it enough to keep it, so I didn't want to like go crazy. I don't know if I'm going to continue with the series. Let me know if you did and if it's any good, but I haven't. I read Belladonna because I pre-ordered this one forever ago from Barnes & Noble, and then I wanted to get Foxglove also from Barnes & Noble, and I was like, I can't in good conscience pre-order that if I haven't even read this one. So I did read this one and tab it up. Not a ton of tabs. It was fine. It was just very like middling. I wasn't overly in love with it. And then I tried to go right from this into Foxglove and couldn't do it. So it was a softie enough. I'll get back to it at some point, but I couldn't get into it right now. A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. This one was meh. I wanted to love it so much more. It's like libraries and magic and fae and like who wasn't gonna love it? Me. I kind of didn't, but I did read and annotate it, so I'm gonna keep it, question mark, I guess. Another book that I read as an arc and then got myself a finished copy of is Rachel Griffin. I get all of their arcs because Sourcefire is one that I'm auto-approved for on NetGalley, so whenever they come up, I always grab them. And I loved this one. I still think I love Nature of Witches best, but this is like a very close second. Maybe first, maybe they're tied. Maybe. Who knows? Anyway, it is heavily annotated and much loved. I really, really did like this one. This one is coastal town, like water magic. Loved it. Loved it. Okay, so that is 6, 7, and 5. So we're sitting at, oh goodness, 12. 12 annotated books right there. Let's get into my romance, shall we? We have When Life Gives You Vampires. This is a plus-size girl who is turned and then is like, damn it, I've got to spend my whole life now in a body that's like curvy. And I didn't want to do that. But then, of course, she falls for her maker, because who doesn't? Annotated a little bit at the beginning, and then I kind of stopped and was just like, I'm just going to read it, you know, whatever. I read this right after I read My Roommate is a Vampire, which I did not annotate at all. I was just like on a little vampire kick. So, you know, I went with kitschy, cute romances. We'll do 14, 15. They're both Tessa Bailey. I got arcs of both of these. Wreck the Halls and Secretly Yours. I also got Unfortunately Yours as an arc, but I don't own that yet. Both of these were read and annotated as arcs, and then I just transferred my annotations when I got the physical copies. This one is 2 rock star women whose children get together to try to convince them to go and do like a reunion, and then they fall for each other. I actually liked it. Secretly Yours is a sunshine florist and a grumpy dude. It was fine. you know, it was good enough for me to buy the physical book and just have it on my shelf. The next two, let's see if you can tell by the size and the color of the tabs, or the fact that I just showed you. This is Losers Part 1 and Part 2. Part 1, Part 2 by Harley LaRue. This is a queer poly why choose romance. One woman, 4 dudes. It's definitely some content warnings, but I enjoyed them. I bought them. Like, I didn't even try them in ebook because I knew that they were really, really large. So I was just like, I'll just buy them, and liked them enough that I went ahead and read and annotated. Did I write in this? Yeah, I did. They were good. I'm not going to make apologies. I actually really enjoyed them. Let's do some thrillers. I have a couple. And then I have some that I'm like, are they thrillers? Are they horror? Who knows? I have The Trap by Catherine Ryan Howard. I will forever get whatever Catherine Ryan Howard writes. I love their writing. I got an arc of this, transferred my annotations into the book. Once I got it, it was a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be. Again, ebooks, it's like hard to tell. This one is a woman whose sister is taken by a serial killer, and she's going out and trying to like bait the serial killer into like coming for her because she wants to go find her sister. It's amazing. I love Catherine Ryan Howard. I read Catherine Steadman's The Family Game, which I was going to put in horror. It's not really thriller. I don't really know what it is. It's an effed up family. A guy takes his fiance to go and spend the holidays with them. And then they do some like freaking, they play games. But the games are like, we're going to try to kill you. If you survive, cool. I annotated this one lightly, but like, it's annotated. It counts. And then I read The Only One Left by Riley Sager, who I am giving a second try to. I really haven't liked their last couple of books, but then this one I actually enjoyed okay enough. Survive the Night left me so angry that I wanted nothing to do with them, but then I was convinced to try this one. And it is lightly annotated. And last on my thrillers is Alice Feeney's Good Bad Girl. Again, Alice Feeney is an auto-buy author. I will get whatever they write and I will read it and love it. I got read and annotated. My thriller shelf over here is quickly becoming like all women, and I love that for me personally. It brings me joy. 21 of them so far. We have our last stack here. I reread Night Film with Amber as a buddy read and annotated it. Did I like it? No, I actually kind of really didn't, but you know, I gave it a go and annotated it, and now it's mine forever because I paid money for it and wrote in it. I've got a YA thriller. Again, this one, or horror. This one is a Kate Alice Marshall, The Narrows. This is about a girl who goes to a school and there's this like ghostly drowned girl haunting her. I love Kate Alice Marshall. I love all of their YA horror. Love their adult thrillers. Big, big fan. Absolutely adore them. Auto by author. This is another one where I get the arcs and then usually get sent the finished copy, which is what happened with this one. Read and annotated and really loved. And it's sapphic, which is fantastic. I love that for me. And then I read Slewfoot by Brom. I also read The Lost Boy, The Child Thief, which is like much larger, but also like oddly shaped books. This one is a feminist, witchy, devilly book. There's artwork in it because Brom's like initially an artist, and I did annotate this one. I like their books. I never love their books, but like I don't dislike them, and they're just really pretty. Like I can't be mad about them because they're just really cool. There's like cool little demon things. I forget their names. Like they're really neat. It was really cool. Another horror. And then the remaining 3 books are all Darcy Coates, and they are all annotated. So I started my year, at least my first read in this house was a buddy read with Amber. It was From Below. This was my first Darcy Coates, and I liked it enough. It had its flaws. It wasn't great, but like it was good enough for me to want to continue reading them. And clearly I had thoughts while I was reading. This one takes over a team that's going to a buried sunken ship, not a buried ship, a sunken ship that's like haunted, and they want to film a documentary. They want to like research it, and then things happen. You know, it's creepy. And then I read The Haunting of Lee Harker, a haunted story. Like she does a lot of haunted house stories. This is a haunted house story but it's still a little bit different than her normal, is what I'm being told. I also read The Haunting of Ashburn House, I think is the one I read, but I didn't annotate it, so I didn't include that. But just a few annotations on this one. I also read that with Amber. I really liked it. Then I was lucky enough to get an arc of Where He Can't Find You by Darcy Coates. This is a YA horror, absolutely terrifying. This is about a town where people go missing and then they show up in bits and pieces sewn together with red thread. Super creepy. It's a YA and it's absolutely terrifying. And there is a little bit of mixed media in this, like little almost graphic novel-y type of stuff. And this is annotated. Again, probably would have been more heavily annotated had it not been an arc that I was like transferring. Like when I read it physically, I tend to annotate a little bit more. So with the horror, we're looking at 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26. So 26 books that are annotated, that out of the 76. I had a whole bunch more that I read that I have physically, but I just didn't annotate. So there's that. A lot of them were special editions where I was like not going to put tabs in them. I was not going to mess with them. With the exception of Late Bloomer, my favorites are all in this stack. So the highlights for the year for me were Lost in the Moment and Found, Tress, No One Can Know, The Narrows, Elantris, Yumi, Court of the Undying Season, Where He Can't Find You, and Bring Me Your Midnight. And it was a mix of fantasy and horror. I had 2 horror, a thriller, a romance, and then 6 fantasy. It was an okay year for reading. But I personally love when I can annotate and look back on things and know that I enjoyed them because they're, you know, marked up and all, you know, tabbed and pretty, and like this brings me joy. 50 books that I read that aren't in this pile of annotated books, but it's not a bad representation of how I enjoyed my books, you know, like it gets there. You get the point. Pretty diversely in terms of contemporary, fantasy, horror, thriller. I read a lot more horror and thriller probably than I had in the past. And a lot of my books were in that 300 to 400 page range. I didn't have that many over 500. And I had about an even mix of ebooks and physical books. I have no goals for reading in 2024. I have no number I want to get to. I just want to enjoy what I'm reading. I want to let myself read my, you know, my shelves. I definitely have some books that I want to get to. I've been tracking all of my books now with Libib. I have completed 528 of the books on my shelves. I have DNF 2 that I still have. I've not begun 127, so I have 127 unread. I'm reading 2, and I have completed 528. So 528 done, 127 still to read. 2 of them have no status. Why? It's a beginner's guide to runes and No One Can Know, which I've read. So let's move that. That'll actually be 529 books read. But, I mean, that means that I have about 127 books that I still need to get to. I've annotated 211 of my books, 107 of them that are signed, but I've got plenty to read this year. Is everything. Let me know if you've had any reading goals that you met. I hopefully will just continue to enjoy my reading. If you're interested in knowing what I read, maybe on like a quarterly basis, let me know and I can make some more videos letting you know what I'm reading. Again, without rating it and without reading too much, it's not always the most exciting thing in the world to continue to make updates, but I'm happy to share what I'm reading if you are interested in knowing. That's going to be it for this one, and I will see all of you in the next video. In the meantime, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye, friends.